Thank you so much for coming. So I'm super excited about this meetup. I've been dreaming about this for quite a while. I think that this group is experiencing something that is really amazing right now. The transition from virtual reality, from the military space, the academic space, to the consumer space. And so I think that's really exciting. And if you do too, why don't you give a round of applause for where we are today? Yeah. Yeah, it's an exciting time. And we have some incredible speakers here tonight. We have both some speakers here in person, and what I think is very appropriate, considering this is a virtual reality meetup, we have some speakers who are going to be here remotely from across the country, which is pretty exciting. So we have some demos in the back that you'll get to experience after the talks, and we have 4 speakers. But before we get to that, I want to introduce myself and let you know what this meetup is about. So this is the first San Francisco virtual reality meetup. And what I think this meetup should be is representative of where we are today, and I feel like I should kind of compare it to some other time in history. So let's go back a few hundred years and say that there was a dream. There was a dream that society had, and that dream was to fly. Man was going to soar through the air. Society had that dream. They made a bunch of attempts and failed poorly. People put feathers on their arms and jumped off cliffs, and people made a bunch of really bad attempts at flying. And then one day, we flew for a few seconds, and that changed everything. And the reason why is that then we had everybody saying, oh, we don't just want to fly, we can fly. Now we just need everybody to get on board. And when everybody's on board, then we have this network effect and things start happening. Then we get the group to make it happen. And we went from those few seconds to the Concorde. And then you could argue, maybe it got us into space. And think about the timeline. We had this dream. And then we had all of these incredible technological advances in a very short amount of time right after that. So the reason why I bring that up is I think that's where we are today with virtual reality. I think we've had this dream for a really long time. The dream of virtual reality is not new, right? Everybody wants to be able to have this incredible control over their world. That's what virtual reality is. It's our ability to just do anything. It's to be God over our domain. And that dream has been around for a long time. But what we're just now finally getting into the hands of the average Joe is the ability to start doing that. We have our 10 seconds of flight. And now we have the opportunity for that network effect. And that's what this meetup is about. We are here in San Francisco. We are in the place where the word virtual reality was coined. And somebody in this room is going to change the world with virtual reality. I'm guaranteeing that. And I think a bunch of you are going to do it. So that's my reason for starting this, is I feel like we can't do that unless we're organized, unless we come together as a group, unless we share. And that's what this is all about. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here and kicking this off. So a little bit about me. I love virtual reality. I got into it in the early 90s, and now I see all this potential, so I'm getting back into it now. I'm not going to talk about me. I would rather talk about me in person with you if you want to find out what I'm working on. What I do want to hear about are these amazing speakers. So let's just get right to that. And please do say hi, because I want to meet every single one of you guys. Let's just kick this off with Dave Chavez from zSpace. Please give him a big round of applause.
Second word, hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. That's a great sentiment. I really like the way you express that. So here we go. I want to tell you a little bit about zSpace. I think many of you have seen it. A lot of familiar faces here. How many of you have had a chance to play around with it? If not tonight, then some other time. All right, so, this going okay? What I don't want to do is bore you with a bunch of marketing stuff. What I want to do is set this thing up, give you a little bit of context, tell you kind of where we came from, why we put it together, and then tell you what it is, and then have as interactive a session as we can for the rest of the time to ask questions, because I know you're going to have a bunch of really interesting questions. This zSpace has been venture funded for 5 or 6 years down here in Silicon Valley. We've been working on this technology for quite some time. As we all know, the VR has been around a long time, and we decided we could put this thing together and provide this experience. So we gathered this group of people together, we figured out what it was going to take, and we did it as what you've seen. And what I normally do when I give this talk is try to explain to people why it is that it elicits this reaction, why it is that almost universally people sit down in front of it and are really surprised. Wow, what's going on? This is a big deal. So I talk about kind of the elements of that, the elements of the surprise, why it is that it has that effect on people. What I'm going to do with you guys is, as I said, set this thing up. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Have any of you ever met this guy, Ivan Sutherland? Normally in the group there's somebody. This is how old this is. This guy put together what had to be the early VR in the 60s. Right? This is some kind of transducers hooked up to that headgear, so that when he moves his head around, his head was tracked. He strapped a couple of CRTs to a face mask, which is not a lot different from what we see back here. And then the rendering technology of the time allowed a wireframe cube to move as he changed his perspective. So from there, a long time ago, there are the basic concepts, right? And you've all been exposed. I don't have to tell you guys about the merits of these different kinds of VR experiences, but what you get is a immersive experience that often is head tracked so that the perspective can change, because of course in real life, as I move my head around, the perspective changes all the time. And then some way to interact with those things. And then we've got the Oculus Rift on the side. A lot of people aren't aware of it. You guys are, of course, but it's getting a lot of attention because its performance is good. And its performance is good in part because the latency is low, because of the inertial components in here that let you move your head around. And it responds appropriately, as closely as possible as to what your brain expects, right? So what we did is we took those concepts and we looked at some general trends in evolution and computation, from distributed systems to sitting behind a display to now interacting as you see in the movies, and the same thing with user interface. How is it changing? Where is it going? What could you do if you had a VR system on your desk? And I think if I hit play here, this is the kind of reaction that we get out of people, and I'm sure some of you have experienced yourself. If you want to know how we generated this thing, which we can kind of do live, and we do it at trade shows and that type of thing, I'll be happy to talk to you about that later. This is a quick example of collaboration. A couple of people using systems looking at the same view of this, different views of the same object. That one's significant because she was one of the founders of the company. She's been around what we've been trying to do here for maybe 8 years, something like that. But still, just the other day, that was our developer conference where we taped that. Just the other day, she reached up and surprised herself and hit herself in the face with a virtual object. And that happens to all of us. You sit down in front of this thing and you kind of get immersed in it, and it doesn't go away. That reaction that you have, it's kind of deep in your brain. It's to me, even almost every day for 4 years or so, it's new. I'm not kidding around. What we're onto here is really real. So let me tell you what it is. Right? It's a full HD 120 hertz panel. There's an active polarizer on top, passive glasses. So what you're getting is a 60 hertz per eye, full HD. Right, there's head tracking cameras in that bezel there. There are markers on the glasses. Passively polarized lenses. Move your head around. The tracking information is computed, sent back to the application, which is all running on the PC. Top of the render loop, the app goes, hey, where is everything? Where's the head? And it draws a perspective. And the same thing happens with the stylus. The stylus has got some couple of IR LEDs in the pan. It's got some inertial components inside. And as you move it around, we're tracking that stuff as fast as we can so that at the beginning of the render loop, the application can know where everything is so that it can draw the perspectives and create this illusion that everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. And it's all an illusion. I'll talk about that in just a second. What else do you need to know? There's a PC on one side. What you see back there running on the laptops is a Core i7, Core i5, one of those things, and a mobile mid-level Quadro GPU and a laptop. And then that's where the application is running. In the display system, there's a tracking system, and that tracking information flows back over USB to the PC. That's it. Just a quick little couple slides about how significant we think this is and why. And then I'd like to open it up and talk about questions. I mentioned that this is an illusion, and of course it is, right? You look at that heart beating in front of you and you kind of pick it up, and of course it's not really there, but you kind of think it is, and you think it's there because a lot of the cues that are coming into your system visually and even a little bit with the haptics and the proprioception as you kind of reach in and pull the thing out, they're all consistent with what you expect, with what we, so your brain fills in all the pieces. You don't have all the information like you know, the isolation between the eyes is not perfect. There's a little bit of latency in the thing, but your brain is happy enough with it that you put it all together and you say, wow, that thing is really there. And so, about expectations, about what you expect when you sit down and see a 2D display, if I showed you a window and I said that's an archaeological site, and you walked up to the window, you'd know instantly that it is a window. It's behaving like a window, and even though you think you're standing still, your head's kind of moving a little bit and does exactly what it's supposed to do. And if I showed you that same view down on the lower left as a portrait, you wouldn't be fooled for a second into thinking that you could reach your hand into that thing. That's because you're getting this binocular information from the portrait that's telling you that everything in that portrait is all on the same plane as the wall. So you're not fooled. And then as you move your head around, the objects in the different distances don't move as they would in the window. There's no question about that. And if I showed you the great big portrait display there with that same view, you'd have no question at all. You'd know, oh, I know what that is. That's going to behave like the portrait. It's certainly not going to behave like the window. But when you turn this thing into a VR system, when you add the motion parallax and the rendering and the binocular cues with the stereo, and then you can interact with it, it starts behaving a lot more like a window. Virtually all complex life has two eyes, exactly two eyes. Not one, not three. One might be enough, right? You can imagine getting around the world. But we live in this spatial environment, so two eyes is the number. Two eyes is enough to give you the binocular cues, right? And that's how we've evolved. And you use it all day long, right? Use it all day long in this spatial environment that we have. And we don't have three eyes because that extra eye would take, even though it might be better, it's not worth all that metabolic energy. It's not worth all the complexity. It's not worth dedicating part of your brain to more visual processing. This little seal is born with a brain that is 70% of the adult-sized brain of a seal. And for reference, a human brain is only 25% of adult-sized brain that's born. So why is it that this seal has gone to all the trouble to evolve to have such a big brain at birth? It's because the seal lives in a very complex spatial environment. It's Antarctica, I think. And very soon after this seal is born, the mother seal is going to abandon the pup, and the pup's got to be able to fend for itself and live in this very spatial, very complex environment, which is, finding a hole in the ice, diving in, searching around for as long as it can to hunt, and then having to find its way out. So nature, evolution, however you want to attribute it, this seal has been wired up to spend a lot of energy, a lot of metabolic energy, be able to deal spatially with this very complex environment. So tie that all back to zSpace and VR on your desk. The question is, what are we doing with all this kind of spatial ability, two eyes, this big dedicated part of our brains to deal with the spatial environment when we sit down in front of our computers? The argument we're making is you're not using it. You use it when you wake up, grab a cup of coffee, drive to work, pull in the office, and then when you stop and you start looking at a 2D monitor. And why is that? It's because the technology hasn't been around until now that you can have something else. And that's a part of this big surprise and a part of the significance of what we're trying to do with this. Our vision is to put this everywhere because it's got applications in education and medicine and gaming. And there's a whole bunch of our world that's volumetric in nature to begin with, and it just naturally falls into this platform. I'm about to the question and answer time. I should talk just a little bit about the stylus. I mentioned proprioception earlier, but when your hand, of course, is connected to everything, and when you move it, you kind of expect things to do what they do. And when you have this one-to-one world in front of you, it adds to the cues to make a lot of sense. And of course, you can see all these examples. You can think of the zillions of examples where man has been kind of dealing with the environment in front in just that same kind of way. Also, these systems at a pretty low level have collaboration supported. So you take complex information and view it multiple times from different perspectives. So multiple people looking at something the way that they want to look at it with their experiences, their views, their sets of filters, and altogether the sum of that could be even better because each of the individual parts could be more powerful. First of all, you're using all your spatial visual capacity, cognition, and then you got a lot of people working together, either two in the same room or across the world, that type of thing. So let me skip some stuff. I want to hear what you think. We got a big community of partners and customers. Let me tell you what we've done. This thing's been out in the hands of primarily of application developers for a little more than a year. And they're writing apps in the professional space and in simulation and training, drug discovery, digital retailing, that type of thing, in a bunch of universities. And it's a pretty exciting time because this thing is just starting to take off. I think I saw a handful of you at ZCon at our first developer conference, which we held in April at the Computer History Museum, and it was exciting. A bunch of developers all coming together saying, hey, look at this, look at all these things we can do. If you want to get involved, we have more of this coming up. Lauren and a couple people with zSpace shirts be happy to, and me too, of course, talk more about what we got. What else do you want to know? Ways to get involved? Okay, that's it. Tell me, any questions? Yes?
How do you get over kind of the new interface problem with people? For example, when I was at the ZCon, a lot of people would use a stylus, grab an object, move it back and forth, but they had to be prompted to pull it out, which then, then they do it, and then it was like, wow, it's kind of like with the Oculus when people have it on, they look straight, and then you're like, look around, and then they're like, okay, I am, now what? And you're like, no, actually move your head. And so kind of how do you break?
Yeah, that's a pretty rich question. How do you deal with this brand new thing that maybe people aren't used to, right? But along the lines of the surprise and the expectations, it's kind of reminds me of some, I don't know if it's urban legend or not, but little kids playing with little kids like 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds playing with iPads, swiping. Then you give them a magazine, and they think it's broken, right? I think that that's not really much of an issue. I think it shows what the opportunity for the UI is like. It shows that if we're right about this, then people are going to use computers like this for the next 20, 30 years, and this is a big, big change. And so what we've got to do collectively is figure out what that experience is going to be like, how people want to use it, so it is both intuitive, but also really powerful, for the advanced user. So you can do things because you can in this virtual world. Do things that you can't do any other way. Yes?
I'm curious what you think about the comparisons between like a screen-based versus head-mounted display stereoscopic system, and what are the various strengths and different applications of those kinds of?
Yeah, there's a place for both for sure, right? There's a lot of pluses to just having something on your desk. You can just kind of sit down and use it. One advantage is you're not completely isolated because you can see the doors and the walls, and so there's less potential, I think, to get disoriented. One of the disadvantages is you're not completely isolated, right? So I think you play those off between themselves. I think that a display is going to be a desktop display is going to be a little bit more easily accepted by the masses, the professional, right, and social pressure too. I don't know what you think of Google Glass and the Rift. It's going to take a little while before. I hope it takes a little while before everybody's walking around with those things, right? It's bad enough it was looking at their phones. Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys have tried networking multiple screens together yet, and if you're running into latency issues or anything, moving objects back and forth.
Yeah, you saw in that quick video you might have seen, it was Lauren and another person in our office moving. Luckily for us, not just for this, but for many aspects of the system, a lot of these latency multiplayer issues have been solved by the gaming industry, right? So the multiplayer games, and they've figured out, you know, bang bang, you guys got to die at the right time. They've figured that stuff out. So the answer is no. We're not shipping, you know, big models across the network in real time, right? You got the local copy of the data, and you can deal with your representation of it locally. I don't think it's much of an issue. I mean, not a slam dunk, but the problem's been solved before, as has, you know, the requirement to render complex stuff in real time and all of that.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you have one of these on your desk? And what if you work with it every day? How has it changed the way you work and what you do? And I mean, in a real way.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't have it. I have it on my desk, but I don't use it in that kind of way. I use it because I'm looking at new stuff all the time. I'm trying out different representations of data and that type of thing. But you might ask that question of somebody who's doing, say, drug discovery or digital retailing or some kind of simulation and training, right? And I think they would say, one of my favorite apps happens to be a molecular modeling app, something like PyMol or Avogadro, something that shows very complex structural data in stereo with the head tracking, so that this very complex information just kind of jumps out, and I don't have to do, in my mind, I don't have to do any more, I don't have to do any reconstruction. The spatial cognition part, the wired part that I was talking about, just kind of kicks in and it's just there. To me, it's really comfortable and really intuitive, and I think that as the applications get more targeted toward those particular kinds of uses, I think people are going to find that they can do things that they couldn't do before. And it's a very comfortable display, computer display, or it should be, as you're used to and we all have on our desks today. So I think it kind of that transition from how we use computers today to a kind of volumetric virtual reality world works. So as the content comes, as an operating system comes, and that if it's really that good, you want to use your computer like that all the time, I think that's how it goes. Yes?
Do you think eventually there might be we might be able to see the implementation of gloves, kind of like Minority Report kind of style, being able to interact with the object with your hands?
Yeah. I don't think you need the gloves.
Yeah.
I think the vision processing stuff has advanced quickly enough that there are a lot of people working on, you know, modeling a skeletal, taking the visual information from cameras, and yeah, you won't have to wait too long to see that. Wouldn't surprise me if somebody in this room is there. Are you doing it? Oh yeah. Please.
Are there any health risks for prolonged usage?
Yeah, I'm not the legal guy. If we were a big company, we'd have a little disclaimer, I'm sure, right? You've seen the stuff from Sony and LG and all these guys that say, gee, you know, warning, if you're under 14, don't watch this for very long. We haven't done a study, and it certainly needs to be done. There are, it's not a perfect simulation of the real world. The focal plane is on the display. And that doesn't happen here when I look at this mic. The focal plane is way up here because the stuff is here, but so my eyes kind of come together, right? That's, if you are, there's a bunch of vision researchers who will talk about how that's kind of a fundamental problem with stereo as we're doing it with a flat screen. There's also, some people are more sensitive to flicker. There's lots of stuff going on. One of our primary objectives in the system design was comfort, was user comfort. So I think we've done a good job with it, but I can't tell you that it's without issue. Ooh, did I say that? Wow. Somebody's going to get really mad at me for that. Yes?
Is there a range of sizes that this thing is limited to displaying?
Is there a range of sizes that
That it can display? Is there a size beyond which you wouldn't be able to do its thing?
No, so we designed the architecture so that the display system and the tracking system are all kind of are architecturally modular. So the display could get bigger, and the tracking system could scale with it, and it could get smaller. So there's really no limitation. Today, with the display technology, we can only track and provide a comfortable stereo display for one user at a time on one display. Display technology is not fast enough to provide those many multiple stereo images. Future display technology will, but a good answer today is just hook a couple of them up, and so multiple people can interact as if they had their own, because they do have their own system. We only ship this product today, and we haven't talked publicly about what's coming next. But so today, just that 24-inch system that's in the back. Yes.
I was wondering if you'd seen any interesting applications for people who are just dealing with numbers and text.
Dealing with
numbers and text.
Numbers and text. Yeah, like what would Excel be like in zSpace?
Yeah, maybe. Or I'm sure there are other I think a lot of people, from engineers to data people, are working with numbers and text. So as opposed to like cool physical objects. So I was wondering if there's any 3D application.
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that question. That's just let me tell you a really quick story and see if it comes close. Well, one of the engineers was working a couple years ago on analyzing error data. We were taking some parameters in the display performance, and we had it turned out to be a volumetric error plot coming out of MATLAB, right? And he'd been looking on his laptop for a couple of days, and he walks in my office. Hey, Dave, come look at this. So I go over there, and he's showing me. He said, "What do you think of this?" And I can't make any sense of that. You've been looking at it for 2.5 days. It makes perfect sense to you. Why don't we put it in zSpace? I was almost kidding, but so then he came back a little bit later, and he did. And he said, "Okay, come see it." And it shocked us all. This data that made sense to him because he'd been working on it for so long. He could see this little anomaly in there, right? The thing just popped out at us, and we could move it around. And so I tell you that because that's the whole spatial cognition part of our brain. We could have seen that same data in a two-dimensional, or I got some kind of multi-dimensional table of numbers, but it wouldn't have been anything near the same, and that didn't have time or other data we could have put to it. Or maybe your question is asking, what do kind of legacy apps look like in zSpace? And you can just pull up a 2D window. An example of that might be that picture-in-picture thing where you kind of fly around that. The camera is just a 2D view. So you could have a virtual window of say, call it a legacy app, call it Excel, just wherever you want. You can have as many as you want. I think email probably going to make sense in 2D for a long, long time. Yes.
When are we going to see the zSpace Mini?
Ah, the zSpace Mini. So you vote for a smaller one. Yeah.
I would like to see it.
Not everybody does. Yeah, I can't tell you. Yes?
Do you think that the resolution of Connect and other visual systems will ever get as good as a stylus type of sensor?
That's a good question. Yes. Will the Connect? Will some of these depth sensing cameras, right? That stuff. Will it get good enough to say reproduce the kind of performance we're getting the tracking system that we have in this house? I think it will, because everything Moore's law just keeps working, and it gets faster and better. Is the demand for it such it's going to happen, very soon? Is it going to catch up to what we're doing? Does it make sense in the application? Does a depth sensing camera make sense integrated in for some other reasons? Those are all really interesting questions. But if I listen to your question, you might say, hey, I tried this with a Kinect and I didn't quite get the same performance that you're getting out of the current system over there. I'd say, well, yeah, that's right. It's hard. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on software distribution for things.
Yeah, that's a good question. What we're trying to do now is build the ecosystem. Is to convince the world that this is the part of the future, right? And we want as many application developers to be bringing value to the system. How it gets distributed, and yeah, you're from the App Store. Yeah, yeah. Those are really good questions. I don't have a good answer for you. I know we're debating it internally. How it unfolds depends on a lot of things, you know. So, but which I really can't talk about too much. Sorry about that. Yes.
So I'll follow up on the one question that was asked before about latency and collaborating across the web. So for most gaming applications, it's kind of event-based driven, or there's some kind of gesture that's made, and then the local copy goes through and does that one event and then moves on. With your system, there's a lot more capability for much richer interaction between people, and have you guys thought about, I mean, the next step is to actually make that happen in collaborative environments between multiple people. And that's a much harder problem. Are you guys heading in that direction to solve that problem?
Yeah, we're doing it a couple ways. I mean, first, you know, the application guys are starting to see those problems, and then we're working on internal tools to try to enable it, make it easy, and somehow standardize it and make it easy. If you've got an interest, I'd love to talk to you about it some more. Interest rooms experience. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Those are tricky problems, and you're right. This kind of interaction is new and complex, and it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense to people. It's got to. Otherwise, the illusion starts to break down, and it's.
Thank you so much.
That was excellent.